All right, so today I want to talk about something that I've talked about before, and it's actually a few things, but the first thing and the main thing being this idea that electric vehicles and solar and wind and all this kind of stuff is clean energy, and there's all this kind of stuff. In reality, that it isn't, and this is one of the many problems of quote unquote clean energy is that the batteries for these electric vehicles need to be mined in many questionable ways. I mean, a lot of this stuff is in Africa. When that kind of stuff is involved in those areas, there's going to be exploitation. There's going to be human rights abuses, and this is the problem. This is one of the many problems I have with. I like the idea of Tesla and all this kind of stuff. I think Elon Musk is a decent guy. I like the fact that he's pushing back against this far left garbage going on in society these days. But the problem is that as of today, driving a Tesla is pretty much just a status symbol. Like I don't understand why people are so obsessed with them really. It is a basically people trying to virtue signal that hey, I'm rich or at the very least moderately wealthy because again these aren't cheap vehicles, and I want to virtue signal and drive around and have people think that, oh, I care about the environment, I'm a good person, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying everyone's like that. There's probably plenty of exceptions, but as a whole, again, the problem too is that it's based off flawed logic. It's based off flawed logic that these aren't clean. This isn't clean energy. This is just not clean energy. Like I say, the batteries that are required for these vehicles, the lithium and all that kind of stuff, a lot of that stuff is mined in Africa. And like I say, people in Africa oftentimes get exploited, and there's human rights abuses going on. So the idea again that that's a good idea. And it's the same stuff with solar too. I think a lot of those materials need to be mined. And again, these are the same people that are against, the oil sands and all this kind of stuff because oh, it's destroying the environment. But yet you got to do the same stuff to get this lithium and the stuff that's required for solar panels. I mean, it's the same stuff with the wind. Those turbines cannot be recycled, and not to mention too, those things are massive. Like one of those arms on a wind turbine, I think, is about the size of the average of a wing on a 747. So again, those things are huge, and those end up in landfills. And this is the problem. The other problem with wind and solar too is that people think it's just like you put them up and you never have to worry about them again. But they only last like 20 years, if that. And this is the problem too is that as of right now, at least in Alberta, um, there is no possible way you get your money back off wind and solar, especially solar. I know for sure. I know people who are in the industry that literally could get the panels and have them installed at cost, obviously being much lower than the average person, and they still wouldn't get their money back on them. So anybody that has solar panels right now, again, it's just another example of virtue signaling. There is obviously the I want to be off the grid thing, but the problem is that you'd have to have a ton of solar panels to be truly off the grid, and I don't even know if they let you be off the grid these days. I'm not actually 100% sure about that. um, but again, the point being is that I'm not 100% against this kind of stuff like I've brought up before, but the problem is that this kind of stuff, number one, there's this false illusion that it's clean and it's just ooh, the best thing in the world when it isn't. Like I say, they gotta have the same mines with the big trucks and all this kind of stuff to get the batteries or the material to make the batteries and to get the materials to make or many of the materials to make the solar panels. And like I say, the wind turbines end up in landfills again. So um, the idea of this being a better solution, at least at this point, is not even close to being true. And so people would probably ask, okay, well, when would you be willing to say that we should go towards wind and solar? Well, whenever wind and solar is cheaper, that's when I would say to do it. The problem is that's never going to happen anytime soon. And the other argument people say, oh, if there was more government funding going towards this kind of stuff. No, that's complete BS. There's tons of government funding going towards all this wind and solar garbage. Not to mention too, government. government, doing this kind of stuff is notoriously bad at doing it. I mean, you look at Elon Musk as a prime example of this. Now, Elon Musk does get some public money, right? Like, I don't even think Tesla actually makes money. I think that they make money based off the amount of government subsidy or government subsidies they make, especially his. I'm not sure about Tesla, but especially his SpaceX. I know they get a lot of government subsidies as well. So again, this is the problem: is that um, Elon Musk built a rocket that NASA said I think it would take 10 years and like $12 billion to make, and Elon Musk did it in like a quarter of the time for like a quarter of the price, right? So the idea of the government being the best way of going about this is absolutely insane because again, the government has no incentive to improve it at the fastest rate possible. Because what happens if a problem that the government is tasked to solve doesn't get solved? They just get more money. Again, what happens if an entrepreneur is trying to solve a money? What happens if he doesn't solve the problem? They go out of business. So again, that's why entrepreneurs are so much better at solving these problems than the government because the government has no threat of going out of business. If anything, the incentive for the government and people that work for the government is to not solve the problems, or at the very least, do it at the slowest pace they possibly can. Um, so anyway, like I said, the main point of the video being is um, we need to stop pretending that wind and solar is this magical holy grail of there's literally no downside to wind and solar, even though there is a massive downside. It is still bad for the environment, and pretending it isn't is literally denying reality. And the other thing too to point out too is that wind and solar, when you try and put it on a competitive level against fossil fuels, it doesn't even come close to comparing. Like it doesn't even come close. Like I say, if you there is no way you will make money off having solar. You go and again that just points to how much cheaper the fossil fuel energy is, and that's even with the carbon tax and all these crazy regulations in Canada. Even with all these crazy regulations, you're still not going to, and not to mention, do there's subsidies for having solar panels, I believe. So again, even with all that, the government is artificially propping up solar and artificially propping down fossil fuels. Fossil fuel energy is still way cheaper, like way cheaper. So again, that is the thing to point out too. And again, people think, oh, we're the future is well, if the future is green, then why are most developing countries not using it? The only countries that are going towards wind and solar, at least the clear majority, are the rich Western countries. I mean, a handful in Europe and then Canada and to some degree the States. China and India are doubling down on coal and on fossil fuels. China and India are building coal power plants left, right, and center. China and India, I believe, contribute like, what is it, 60% of the world's emissions? Two countries? Like, again, this is one of the other many reasons. Like, the reality of climate change and all this kind of stuff is that the bigger goal is to push socialism. Again, the Green New Deal confirmed this. Um, the goal is to push socialism, right? Because if the goal was to actually care about the environment, they would be willing to make personal sacrifices to care, and not to mention too, they would be willing to make personal sacrifices. Which again, most of these people pushing, like especially the politicians and the high-level scientists and experts or whatever you want to call them, they live luxurious lifestyles. I mean, you look at all these like Leonardo DiCaprio is a prime example of it, flying around on private jets and on your yachts. Like the guy's literally contributing like 1,000 times more emissions than the average person does, and you're claiming to care so much about climate change. Like you are the biggest piece of garbage I can possibly think of when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, good actor, but an absolute piece of garbage. And when it comes to politics in your personal life, like, my God. So anyway, like I said, that's the other thing I wanted to bring up too. And the other, like I say, the other main reason why these people don't care is that they never spend 1 minute criticizing India and China. And like I say, if India and China could reduce their emissions by 1%, it would make more of a difference worldwide than if Canada reduced our emissions by 50%. And again, reducing your emissions by 50% is completely crazy. Tons of people would die if you actually did that. So again, that's completely unrealistic. But is it realistic that China and India reduce theirs by 1%? Well, absolutely. So again, that just goes to show that these people, the main goal is not climate change. That's not the main goal. And the fact that there's more contradictions and more holes in their argument than I can think of and count on one or even two hands probably. Again, the goal is not climate change. The goal is to push socialism. And that's the main thing, that whenever people bring up climate change, that's where the debate should steer. The goal, they don't care about climate change. The goal is socialism. So again, that's the last thing I wanted to point out. So anyway, if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you check out those links in the description. Make sure you follow me on those other platforms and stay tuned for more.